Hey everyone, today we have the wonderful Jessica Payne. She is a thriller author and self-professed expert coffee drinker. And when she's not writing or drinking coffee, you'll find her trail running through the forests of the Pacific Northwest. She was co-host to the popular Moms Writers Club podcast, which has now been rebranded to Authorhood, and is the creator of the Substack community One Tired Mother. Her next novel, Somebody Worth Killing, is coming out on Berkeley Penguin Random House in 2026. And her other novels include Make Me Disappear, The Lucky One, which I've just finished reading. It's wonderful. The Good Doctor, and Never Trust the Husband. Please pick up her stuff. It's incredible. Welcome, Jessica. Thank you for coming on.
Hi, Jason. Thanks so much for having me. I'm excited to be here, and thanks for that wonderful introduction.
Of course. I want to start talking about your personal journey. So I'm always curious about people's journeys to writing. Everybody has a different story. So could you tell us a little bit about your path to becoming a writer? Either you could either take it like when you fell in love with writing, or your path to taking it more seriously as like something you want to do for a profession.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I'm a lot like a lot of other writers where I grew up writing in a notebook in the back of the classroom, not paying attention to what I was supposed to be paying attention to. But it was in 2018 when I decided that it was time to like really dig in. And I had tried to write books many times before. Back in the day, I tried doing NaNoWriMo several times, but my daughter was born in 2018. And as a fellow parent, maybe you can kind of understand this. We had like a kind of wild delivery that was a little scary at times. And I think between that and having this little life in my hands, it made me realize how short life is. And I just had this moment where I was like, if I'm going to pursue my dream, I need to get going. Like time's not slowing down for me. And I knew that I always wanted to write a book. Like I'd go into bookstores and I'd be like, there are so many books in this bookstore. Surely I can do this too. But I'd never quite figured out how. So in 2018, when my daughter was 4 months old, I decided this is it. I'm going to do it. I'm going to write a book. And I did. I proved to myself I could, and it was awful, as many first books are. But by my fourth book, I think I had gained a lot of skill, and I knew how to query books by then, and I had kind of gotten my feet wet. And it was actually my fourth book that became my debut, Make Me Disappear. It was the book that got me my agent, Kimberly Brower, and also my first book deal. So, I mean, that sounds very fast, but it didn't feel that way at the time. You know, it took several years. It took many books, lots of ups and downs, a ton of rejections. And then I published my first book in 2022.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, I have so many questions from that.
Go for it.
First of all, I love the symmetry of Mom's Writers Club. I took it as you're a mom, you're writing. Let's gather together this community of parents that are writing. But there's this extra level there, which is your journey into motherhood almost inspired your journey as an author. So I mean, for you, they're intrinsically linked, which is really cool. So that name now hits on a whole nother level for me, which I didn't know about.
Yeah, absolutely.
The other thing that comes to mind is, so I mean, your story of you wrote 4 novels before, finding that level of success is not uncommon. I am curious about the time frame for that. So you signed in 2022 with the 4th or 5th novel.
So I think I signed with my agent in 2021 because I think I'd been querying in 2020.
Oh, I see.
And then we revised it, and then I think it sold in 2022. No, I think it sold in 2021 and it was published in 2022. Right. Sorry, the dates kind of blurred together. So it was my 4th book. Okay. And so I had queried 4 books before I got my agent. And just following up on what you said, it's so normal. I know so many newer authors who do not get signed on their first book, and that's pretty much the norm. It doesn't mean you shouldn't try. It's such a learning experience. And some people do. Some people are the unicorn who, sign with an agent on their first book and all that. But I guess I just say that to say stick with it. You will get better. And it's I think the average is like 4 to 6 books for most authors to sign with an agent.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard the same, and I find it helpful to know that. I find it inspiring to know that if the first book doesn't work, it's okay.
Oh yeah, I
It doesn't mean you're a bad writer. Write another one.
no, absolutely. It's totally normal. And I think for me, so I used to listen to Alexa Dunn's YouTube channel. And for me, going into querying with like the information she had like packaged into these wonderful videos about how it's totally normal to get all these rejections, knowing that made it way easier to not take it so personally and not feel so bad. And just knowing that that's part of the process and normalizing it, because I think people don't always talk about that part of it a lot. I think that helps a ton.
Absolutely. And that's actually, you're leading me into the next couple questions I wanted to ask you. So, um, I want to, let's talk about your finding your agent story. Everybody has their own finding the agent story. And everybody has their own angle on it. So we know now the build up that there was the books that you had written, you'd finally caught the eye of Kimberly Brower with the fourth attempt. Um, so can you tell us about like how you found Kimberly either, or you know what that the particular story that you went through with finding your agent.
Yes, I will tell you all about it. I'll give you some background because I think this might be helpful to listeners who are querying. So, my first book, I got 0 requests. My
Mm,
second book, I got 1 request. And by request, I mean like a full or a partial request from an agent.
right.
My third book, I got like 15.
Wow.
That book did not get me an agent. And by my fourth book, I think I got like 20 something full requests. So, it was really magical to see it build and to realize it was getting better. And that gave me a lot of hope. So, signing with Kimberly, she had actually requested on Twitter, they used to have these pitch contests, and I don't know if they're still doing them on like Blue Sky and Threads or not. But I did one that was called Pit Dark, and Kimberly
Mm,
had requested, and I had actually already queried her. So, like, that felt very cool that she was interested, and I thought she might be interested. And that was in October of, I think, 2020. And then in January of 2021, I actually got a request for a call from a different agent.
mm,
And that was the magical moment everybody thinks it will be. I burst into tears and
wow.
was so excited and happy because I had queried 4 books and sent out hundreds of queries. So it was a huge moment. It was very emotional. My husband, I think, thought somebody had died because of all the tears. I was like, no, no, an agent just wants a call.
Wow.
Um, so that conversation was great. I ended up getting a second offer later that week. And then Kimberly asked for a call the following week, like a few days before my deadline. And I was really excited. So I ended up having 3 calls, which was very cool. It was really interesting to get to kind of compare and contrast. But I knew like within a few minutes of getting on the phone with Kimberly that she and I were going to be like the best match. And we really have been. I feel like I knew that I wanted an editorial agent, and I could tell right off the bat that she had a vision that made sense to me. And I felt like we communicated well, which I think is so important. Like, I can't overstate how important it is to be able to communicate with your agent. And she's pretty like fast about getting back to me about things, which is also nice. I can be a little bit of an impatient person, so it's nice to hear back quickly. But yeah, we had a great call and I decided to sign with her and we got revising.
Wow. Every step of that journey is interesting. The first of all, I want to lean into a little bit that statistic that you walked us through in the beginning, where you said the requests got substantially higher with each book, went from 0 to 1 to 15 to 20 something, right?
Yeah.
So the two things, and I know you don't have an answer to this question, but I think it's interesting to explore. The two things that come to mind are either you got a lot better at writing a query letter and finding titles, or your books got better, or some like perfect blend of the two.
I do have an answer for that
Yeah, yeah. Oh,
actually.
great, great.
I think it was 3 things. I recently found my query letter for my first book. And I was surprised that I thought it was pretty good because I got a
Mm,
lot of feedback, which I think is helpful. So I think a few things happened. One, between my second and third book, I switched genres. I
mm,
think one thing I can tell listeners is that being aware of what's selling well, that will help you get an agent. I'm not saying that you should write a genre you're not interested in, but I had been writing contemporary fantasy, which now is selling well, but it was not in
Mm.
2019. So I decided I wanted to figure out how to write a thriller. So I think switching to a genre that at that time was something agents were looking for, I think that really helped. I definitely think my writing got significantly better, and not just the line level writing, but learning how to plot a book. I think a lot of newer writers, I remember getting feedback on my second book and realizing it didn't actually have a plot. Like things
Mm.
happened, but it wasn't like if you look at Save the Cat, the book by Jessica Brody, the plot beats,
Mm.
learning that made a big difference. And using a book called Story Genius also helped a lot. So I would recommend those books to anyone. Um, and then I think the other thing I did, I started using comp titles because I'd always heard like you don't have to. So I
Mm.
didn't because I didn't know what to comp my books to. But I started getting a lot more requests once I read more in my genre and found good comp titles. It was like night and day, the difference. So I think those three things helped a lot.
Yeah, they're so, and they all make perfect sense. The comp title thing is specifically interesting. The idea that it's hard for writers to find something that hits that sweet spot of it's similar to but not too much like this thing. Also, this thing's not astronomically popular, so you're not kind of fluffing your feathers by saying your book's like it. But what I've heard on the back end of that is that for agents, and you probably now have seen this firsthand, agents see that as you being an authority in your space. Even if you get the comps wrong, even if your book isn't exactly what they are, if you're comping books that are in your space that are reasonably close, you're showing that you're like familiar with the area you're writing in, and it allows them to maybe trust you more as a writer. I mean, I mean,
Yeah, I
that's
think
getting a little
that's true.
psychological, but
No, I think it's true. And I think it does matter. I think when you're writing the book, it feels like maybe it doesn't matter. But I think one of the best things you can do as an author is be aware of the market. And I know some people don't like that or don't like the idea of that. But the reality is, and it pains me a little bit to say this, while your book is art, it is also a product that you are
mm,
asking a publisher to take on and sell. And if an agent feels like you're aware of just how that works, which there's a lot of information online, it's really not terribly hard to like start to learn about this stuff. We all start, at the beginning, but I feel like they feel like you will be a better partner in business. And then also, yeah, just that you are a little more aware about what's going on in your genre and in the business in general.
right. That's really well put. Um, okay, so you've already given us a lot of fantastic tips about querying and insight into querying, but
Hmm.
I do know that you have even more to share. I know this firsthand because I've listened to Mom's Writers Club podcast, and I know that you've gone over this, to the end of the earth and back. So I guess just before we put this idea of agenting and querying behind us and move on with the rest of the interview, is there maybe one or two helpful tips we can give the listeners that you think would be like a really good um, thing for them to know, or a takeaway, or something to look out for when they're querying?
Yeah, I think I have two tips that really applied to me. The first one would be to get feedback on your query. And I do
Mm.
not mean your sister or your mom or your spouse. And I say that, and people know that, but they still do it. And I know
Mm,
someone listening right now is like, "Yep, that's me."
mm,
Have someone else read it. Ideally, you would have someone read your query letter who has read the book, and then also someone who has not read the book. What I find is that people who have read the book often will connect dots that are not there.
mm,
So that person who has not read the book will help you identify those things. I also think that finding a more experienced writer to be a mentor and to read your query letter, or even if you can afford it, hiring um, like a writer who does this freelance or an agent who does this freelance to look over your query letter, it can make a huge difference. And it's something you can practice. Like, I didn't get good at writing query letters overnight. It took a lot of practice, and it took reading other people's query letters and realizing like what components made it work or made it not work so I could apply that to my own. My other tip would be keep in mind that getting an agent is sometimes, I mean, yes, your book needs to be good, but there's also a luck factor in there. And by that, I mean, it needs to be the right agent at the right time. It needs to be the right book. And having all of those factors come together is a little bit of a numbers game.
Hmm.
And I truly believe that. I see a lot of people send out 20 queries and be like, oh, I sent out 20 queries and I only got one request. And, I got all these rejections. And by all means, like revise your query letter if you're not getting many requests, which by the way, I think 10% is a pretty good rate of request. I've heard people say 30 or 40%. I never got 30 or 40%. Yet I got 3 offers. So if you're getting a lower rate, please don't worry about it. But it is a little bit of a numbers game. It is good to send out 100 queries on a book before you decide to shelve it. There's a really great article. It's called it's something like why you should aim for 100 rejections a year. I send it to every querying author I know. It's so true. Like if you're not putting yourself out there, you can't get a yes. And kind of going out there in the world with like, I'm seeking rejections means you are giving yourself more opportunities, even if it might not feel that way in the moment.
Oh, I love that. I have read that article, and I have taken on that philosophy of every rejection is one step closer. And it because art is so subjective. The way I think of it too is, when you go to a bookstore and pick up a random book off the bookshelf and just open up to page one, many of the books you don't like, you put right back down, not because it's not a
Yeah,
well-written book, it's because it's not your taste. And
totally.
that's what the
That's
agents are doing.
100% it.
That's
Yeah,
what the
no,
agents are doing.
absolutely. I think that's a great way to put it.
Yeah, so it's the same. All right, let's move on to writing and craft. I want to get more into the nitty-gritty stuff.
Let's
So
do it.
So you wrote 4 books between 2018 and 2000 or 2021-ish, 2000, and then now you've written 4 books since. So you've written 8 books basically at this
Oh,
point, give or
I've
take.
written more than that. They just haven't all been
Okay.
published.
So you've written tons of books at this point. So let's talk about how your process has changed after all this time. Then, have you seen a significant shift in the way you write or draft? Have you seen that you've come to recognize something particular in your style or your voice or anything like that? I'm just intrigued in what you noticed, how you've developed as a writer over time.
Yeah, for sure. So I think that, yes, I've changed a lot over time. And I think every book is different. I feel like I'm a slightly different writer for every book because every
Mm.
book needs something a little different I have found, which is so frustrating. You're like, can't
Yeah.
this process just keep working? Because it truly feels like every time I go to write a book, I'm like, wait, how do I do this again? So anyone who feels that way, know that you are not alone. The big differences, though, one, I feel like I'm more confident in my voice and in understanding how to create a different voice for each character and how and the basic thing for that would be how they view the world. Like someone who drinks tea versus how someone drinks coffee will approach a coffee shop very differently. And like,
Mm.
I used to be a tea drinker. I mean, I've always been a coffee drinker, but I had stomach issues for a while. So I switched to tea for a while and thankfully I'm back to coffee these days. But if you're a tea drinker that certain coffee shops don't have a good assortment of tea. So maybe
Mhm.
when you go in a coffee shop, that voice is like almost expecting that instead of being like, oh, I just need my caffeine fix. And that voice really affects how a character sees the whole world. It's like the filter through which they see the world. The other big thing is on like a broader perspective is my process has changed a lot. It is a little different for each book, but I think this is one of your questions actually. I
Go
used
for
to
it.
be a I used to be a total pantser. Like I would literally sit down to write and just start writing and like whatever came to mind is what I would write. And
Mm.
I'm not a total plotter now, but I had to, when I was like pitching books for like an editor as an option, like I had to be able to come up with a summary for the first time ever.
Mm.
Or like Somebody Worth Killing, my upcoming book, it sold on proposal. So like I had to sell it with a whole synopsis. I had to plan out the whole book ahead of time
Wow.
in depth, like I think it was 10 pages long, the synopsis, single spaced, by the way.
Wow.
Um, so kind of figuring out how to do that. And part of that was getting better at understanding plot beats. And I have found that it really helps. I do so much less revising than I did when I was 100% a pantser because I'm not rewriting half the book, which I've had to do before. So I really actually like that change, and I still feel like I have a lot of freedom. Like if I get the like main plot points down, I do a lot of pantsing in the middle. Like sometimes characters appear out of nowhere still, but they fit within that broader story I've already designed. So I guess those would be the biggest changes. But I feel like it's constantly evolving. So who knows?
Right. Well, I'm seeing. So if I could take all of what you said and kind of you summarize it, I would say it seems like you've learned to trust yourself. So before you were looking for it along the way by discovery writing, now you're kind of planning it out ahead of time, but you trust that that when you go off the path in the middle, you'll find your way to at least back to the original point you were making or to a new one, a new, even better one, which I think is
Absolutely.
a really good way to approach the process.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes things still shift around. I don't ever feel locked in by a synopsis, but it's just kind of a guiding light. And then I can change things if I need to, for sure.
And let me say, take the moment to say congratulations on selling a book on a fiction work of fiction, a proposal.
Thank
That's
you.
like an incredible milestone, right? In someone's career.
I I I wasn't sure I would ever do that, and I don't know. Sometimes I'm still like, did I actually do that? And I don't know if I will ever be able to do it again. I sure hope so. I hope I have enough success that I'm able to. But it was when my agent said she thought she could sell it on proposal, I was like, are you sure? So, yeah, it was
I
a big moment. Thank
yeah,
you.
they trust you. You've made it. You're a trustworthy writer, a trustworthy name. That's an incredible moment. You should definitely celebrate that.
Thank you.
I want to talk about the starting over each time because
Yeah,
this is something that you wrote about on Substack that really hit me hard because I've written a few books myself at this point, and every time I start a new book, I feel like I've never written a book before, and
right?
and you feel all alone in it too. So when I read your post about it, I was like, oh, this is someone else gets it. Um, but you wrote like really eloquently about it. I just want to ask you about your thoughts on this challenge of starting over and some things you've noticed that might be helpful tips for, when you do have to go through that process.
Yeah, so I feel like every time I start writing a book, it's like I've never written a book before. And I think the conclusion I've come to is that you just have to start writing. And
Hmm.
that's hard to do sometimes when you feel like you want to know for sure what you're doing. You have to be okay with that uncertainty and even embrace it. Like my process now, kind of talking about process again, is that so I just started writing a new book. I have started this book 4 times,
Hmm.
but this fourth time is the right time. And I can just
Wow.
tell. I can tell because it starts flowing.
Hmm.
And that's okay. And I think for a long time, I resisted that idea that I would write something that wasn't correct or wasn't right for the story. So then I'd have to start over. Like that was a bad thing. But I think drafting so many books has taught me that sometimes you have to write the chapter or the beginning of the book that you're going to end up throwing away because you can't get to the correct one until you've written that. Like I, on many occasions, have written a chapter, reread it, and been like, "Oh, this does not need to go in the book at all." And in that moment, it's frustrating because that's 3 hours, 5 hours of writing time. But I don't think I could have written the chapter that needs to be there had I not written that first and realized it didn't belong in the book. And I think beginnings are the same way. Like I can write a synopsis and, do my character work ahead of time all I want. But when I start writing that character on the page, sometimes she is totally different than who I thought she was going to be. And the only way I can figure that out is to keep writing her and let her kind of tell me who she wants to be. So I just have to be okay with restarting my book multiple times. And I am, and that's fine. And I always think, oh my gosh, is this ever going to work? But then one of those times it just clicks into place. And I'm like, oh yeah, okay, this is her voice. Now I'm on to chapter 2 and chapter 3 and chapter 4.
Right. So just go ahead and write through it and that challenge of learning to trust yourself.
Yeah, it is, I think, about trusting yourself, but also trusting in your ability to get there. I think we often fear that like this is the time we won't be able to write the book. And there have been books that I started writing that I realized this isn't right. This isn't what I want to be writing, or for some reason this isn't working right now. There's a book I just set aside a few months ago, actually, that
Hmm,
I think I will write that book someday, but it's not quite, I'm not quite there yet. So I shifted to this other one and it took off like magic.
right. Oh,
And, realizing that was the right decision and trusting myself enough to move on to the next thing, at least
that's
temporarily.
that's amazing. This also brings to mind, I don't know how much this is always a part of the process, but I think it's probably there in the back of our minds. When when we move from book to book, that we kind of like secretly want to level up and
Yeah.
write a better book now. And that puts
Yeah.
extra pressure when you're staring at the blank page and going, I don't want to get this wrong because this one's supposed to be better than the last one. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There's like that
It's
little, there's,
so hard.
yeah, it's interesting, but it is always like baby steps at first, no matter what. Yeah, it's
It
interesting.
is. And I think a lot of that growth actually comes in revisions. And I
Mm,
think we forget about that when we're trying to draft because we want it to be good now. But so I'm doing a final read through on the second book in the Somebody Worth Killing series before we send it to my editor. And when I remember writing this book and being like, this book sucks. This is not as good as the first one, which is
right,
my fear, by the way, because how
right,
many series have we read where like the second book was just not as good as the first? And I
yeah,
want it to be good.
right.
But I've done several rounds of revisions now. And I had a moment this morning actually where I was like, oh my gosh, I can't stop reading this. And I know it
That's
happens because I
awesome.
wrote it. So realizing that, like, though that initial draft maybe wasn't leveled up, by the third or fourth round of revising, which I don't do full drafts. I don't know how people redraft over and over, but but anyway, like through the revisions, that is often where you level up. It's where you recognize, okay, this isn't quite working. What do I need to change, or what chapter needs to be added, or should I cut these paragraphs? Or I feel like revisions are where a lot of the magic is at, and we don't give revisions enough credit for that because most of us don't like revising.
I
At least,
love that. I love that. That
thanks.
what a profound answer, because we always talk so much about growth as a writer, and we
Uh-huh.
think that means in writing the book. But
Yeah.
really what you're suggesting, and I agree with you actually completely here, is probably a lot of that growth is it happens in the revision stages, which is the
Definitely.
one that we're doing begrudgingly half the time,
It's
and it's not as
true. It's
fun,
so true.
it's all that stuff.
It's true. I will say, as I've grown as an author, I'm starting to enjoy revising more. So there's hope, I
Wow.
guess.
Awesome. Awesome. I want to, in another post in Substack, you wrote about jealousy, which uh, on this writer's journey, when because it is such a long journey, and because hopefully we're not doing it alone, we attempt to surround ourselves with community and other people, but then jealousy rears its ugly head. And you wrote this really cool article about, taking jealousy and kind of twisting it to find the positive. So I just wanted to, I was hoping you could talk a little bit about, what you discovered there in with that.
Yeah, I would love to. So there is a podcast I really love. I can't remember the name of the podcast, but it's by Camille Pagan,
Hmm.
Pagan. And she talks about writing books and about mindset with writing books, which I'd never given much thought to, but she had written, or she did a podcast episode on jealousy, which really made me rethink how we see jealousy. Because, if I'm jealous of my friend who got this awesome book deal, which I have felt that way before. I have felt that way many times, or the friend who got an agent before me or signed with the agent I wanted to sign with or whatever. Um, that feels like such a negative emotion. And you feel bad too because you want to be happy for that person you care about. It's like, this is my best friend, or this is my critique partner, or whoever. Like, I should be happy for them. Why do I feel this way? And then you feel even worse because you're like kind of beating yourself up for feeling that way. But one thing that Camille said, and I talk about this in that article, is that jealousy is a great way of identifying what you want, and you can turn it around and make it a positive thing. Um, like, if somebody got a book deal with my favorite imprint of all time and I'm jealous of them, that's a really good way for me to identify that I, want to get a book deal, or that I want to work with that imprint or write that kind of book. And in identifying what it is we want, we can then take steps to achieve that goal. And it might look a little different for us, but I just I found that to be so helpful. And I had never thought about jealousy that way, like my friend signed with an agent. Like, okay, so obviously you want an agent, but I just feel like it's really helpful for you to identify concrete goals to then be able to take steps toward them. The other thing she said that I thought was really interesting, and I think I touched on this in my article, is that we're very rarely jealous of the people who are like 10 steps ahead of us. Like, I'm not jealous of Stephen King because Stephen King has been published since like the 70s, I think, and is
Right.
like, I don't think I'm ever going to be Stephen King, and that's fine. I'm not jealous of him. I'm more likely to be jealous of the person who's just a few steps ahead of me.
Mm-hmm.
And what I like that she said about that is that that often means you're closer than you realize, because you're jealous of the person who's just a little bit ahead of you usually. And I just thought that was so powerful. It makes you realize that you're actually closer to your goal than you think. And now you've identified what it is. So what is that person doing that you could do? Or what are similar people in similar positions doing that you could do to get to that goal? So I found that to just be so inspirational.
Oh yeah, so many great takeaways. The using it to refine your goals, the idea of if it's a person that's just one rung ahead of you on the ladder, then you're right there. You have what it takes to take that next step. So
Isn't that
that
cool?
yeah, that's like a reason to celebrate. But also like there's something beautiful about the double negative there, right? Like you're feeling jealousy, which is a negative emotion, and then you start to beat yourself up about it, which is a negative emotion, but then they turn into a positive. Right, the
Yeah,
double negative turn
absolutely.
into the
Yeah.
so it's
Your
something
friend's
cool.
doing you a favor. They're
Mm-hmm.
helping you identify what you want.
Very cool. All right. I'll I'll ask you one more long question, and then we'll shift it into a fast round.
Okay.
So, because you've now worked with traditional publishing with 4 books now, and I believe, if I'm not mistaken, you're working with traditional publishing with the next book or series of books, but with a different editor or a different publisher. Is that
Yeah,
true?
so I was with Book Couture before, which is an imprint of Hachette UK, and then Somebody Worth Killing is coming out with Berkeley, which is part of Penguin Random House.
Okay, so that's amazing. So you'll have great
Thanks.
insight here. I'm curious about some of your takeaways for listeners about things that surprise you with traditional publishing, or things you've learned in the last couple of years, some kind of wisdom that you can impart. Anything, since you have kind of an insider's eye on things. Anything you could share that's might be helpful.
Yeah, I thought about this question a little bit ahead of time. I think one piece of advice I can offer on traditional publishing is to remember that it's a long game and that just because something doesn't happen right now doesn't mean it won't happen in the future. For example, I had 2 books not sell between the 4 books I had with Book Couture and Somebody Worth Killing selling
Mm,
to Berkeley. I had 2 books that went on sub and did not sell. And that was not fun. That's really hard dealing with that rejection. But I knew that I just needed to keep trying, keep working on becoming a better writer, pay attention to the market and with selling and just doing all the things. And I sold a 2 book deal to Berkeley, that's amazing. So I feel like a lot of people give up or they assume that because their first book didn't sell or their second book didn't sell, that they're done. And that is just not the case. You really just have to play it like a long game. People who have been authors for a long time, probably almost every one of them, if not every one of them, has had a book not sell or has had to sign with a different agent or something like that. So I guess I just share that because I think it's a great example that if you want to be an author in traditional publishing, you have to know that the rejections do not end with trying to get an agent, that there are going to be lots of ups and downs. There will be books that don't sell, and then books that sell in 3 weeks, and then, books that you don't end up with the publisher you wanted to, but then you're with your dream publisher the next time. It's a constant roller coaster, and a lot of success in traditional publishing is sticking with it and just continuing to work.
that's great advice. And yeah, reminder that even uh, after real success there's still real failure. I mean, that
Oh
is a
yeah.
remarkable thing that you went through to have 4 books published. You might think, I'm in.
Yeah.
I'm in. I'm in now. And then to have 2 books after not make it, I can see how I don't want to put words in your mouth or thoughts in your head, but I can see how you could almost instantly go from I'm in to my career's over. This is it.
Yeah.
I can almost
No,
see
totally.
myself going through that traumatic of a transition. So that it's a great reminder of the ups and downs of it all.
Yeah, and I think that, that thought process is a great example of why you have to remember, you're in it for the long game. You're not in it for just this book. You're in it for the next 10 books or 20 books. Or at least I hope you are. If you want to be in traditional publishing or any kind of publishing actually.
Yeah.
It's somebody, I don't know who said this, so I'm not going to even try to quote it, but it was something like if you can be anything besides a writer, do that. But then the other one was something like, I'd rather be having my worst day of writing than my best day of whatever other job I'd be doing. And I think that's really true. I worked as a nurse before I was a writer, and I loved a lot about being a nurse. I loved helping people. I worked in the NICU, which was an amazing place, truly full of miracles. But I like this better, even on the worst day. I like it better than that. And not because there's anything wrong with that, but just because I was meant to be a writer and I truly feel that way. And um, remembering that when times get hard is really helpful.
Yeah. Oh, that's such great advice. And I think probably, I know I've been through it, and probably many of the listeners have too, moments where you get so frustrated and you walk away from writing for a time and you just know, um, I, you get that itch and you're like, I have to write again. It doesn't go
Yeah,
away. It doesn't matter about if you're selling books. It doesn't matter if you're finding success. That itch to write,
absolutely.
it just doesn't leave. And
Totally.
that's the thing you need to always maintain. So I think that's wonderful advice, like in those downtimes to remember, like that's what you're in it for.
Totally. And I let me add, like, I do think it's important to take care of yourself. If you need to take a month away or a year away, then do that. Like, if you need to take a break from querying or writing or whatever, there's nothing wrong with that. Um, but make sure you come back if it's what you really want to be doing.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. Okay, so we made it to the fast round here. We did touch on some of this a little bit, but it's just still fun anyway. We'll go through it.
Okay.
And you can answer in one word and we can just move on, or you can kind of like elaborate. It's up to you, however you want to do it.
I like to
So
talk, so I'll be sure to elaborate.
perfect. So the first one is one we did touch upon. It's the age-old question: are you a plotter or a pantser? So you can give us your specific answer here, then.
Yeah. Well, I think the new term is plantser,
Mm,
somewhere in between, which I think is a good place to be.
yeah, and I think I'd put myself there too, probably as well. I think I think most writers probably find themselves somewhere in the middle between the two. Okay, what's one writing rule you don't really agree with?
I don't really agree with any of them. I know that
Mm.
this isn't like one, but I don't think you have to write every day. I don't think you have to write what you know. I actually think a lot of the fun is like learning about the things you don't know. I don't think that there's any one right way. Um, so yeah, I mean, throw the rules out, do what works for you.
Oh, I love it. Great answer. This one could be taken a lot of different ways. So the
Mm.
question's wide open, and the question is who inspires you, and this could be just like personally or career wise.
Yeah, so I'm sure someone's going to roll their eyes at this answer, but it's true. I actually find new authors to be really inspiring, like
Mm,
people who are trying to write their first book. I love the energy that new writers bring to the table, and I love seeing how they get so excited. Like I have several like friends who have decided to write books for the first time, and there's just something about it, and I think especially as someone who's like not that I've been around a super long time, but like, I've published some books. It's really fun to see that and be reminded of that when you're like, oh my gosh, another round of revising. But it's like,
mm.
I'm so lucky to be in this position where like my agent or editor is sending me another round of revising. Like, it's a great reminder of just how special it is.
Oh, I love that. And now you're someone who's has wisdom to share. You're in this special role of being able to impart wisdom on other people, which I'm sure is pretty special too.
Yes, I love being able to help out.
Very cool. Okay, next one. Uh, you've given a lot of great advice today, but just for the sake of the fast round, if you could
Hmm.
offer one piece of advice to aspiring writers, what would it be?
Sorry, I just adopted a kitten. She's a little all over the place.
What is her name?
This is Pearl.
Oh, hey Pearl.
She just woke up from a very long nap, so
That's amazing.
she's going to join us
Congratulations.
with lots of energy. Thank you. Okay. I'm sorry, what was the question?
Oh, so if you could offer one piece of advice to aspiring writers, what would it be?
My one piece of advice would be to write. I feel like I've met so many people who say like, oh, well, when I'm better at grammar or when I've read more books or when I have a better idea of the genre, I will start writing. Um, but you just need to sit down and start writing now. Like there's no time like the present, and all of that stuff you'll sort out along the way. You'll learn when you need to learn it. I think this also applies. So like when I wrote Make Me Disappear, which is the book that got me my agent and that got me my first publishing deal, there were things I'd never done before that I did with that book. And I worried about trying to write that book because it was the first time I'd done dual point of view and dual timeline and all this other stuff. But you will figure it out as you go, and you should just start writing. So I think, there's always a reason not to write, but sit down and write anyway.
Great advice. Great advice. And the final question for today, before we wrap up here, is my favorite of all of them. So, and this is another wide open question. So you can take this as however you want. But the question is, name a book that changed your life.
Okay. So the book that made me want to write thrillers is The Good Girl by Mary Kubica. And that book was just so well done. And I remember reading it and then reading it again and being like, oh my gosh, this is what I want to do. And realizing that. So I was actually scared to write thrillers. They feel so complex. Like, how do you work in that big plot twist? So learning how to do that. But that book made me want to write thrillers, which was like the beginning of everything in a way. And then the other book I would recommend it's called Big Magic by Liz Gilbert. Have you heard of that one?
I have heard of it. I have not read it, but I've heard of it.
Oh, it's so good. So it's by, I guess she's published under Elizabeth Gilbert. She is the same author who wrote Eat, Pray, Love. I've never read that book. I've been told it's very different. So, if you didn't love that book, this book is more about writing. It's probably in the self-help section. I don't know why, but it's a book very much about creativity and writing. And I feel like many people feel almost like they need permission to start pursuing something creative as an adult, especially women and moms who have a lot of stuff going on. They feel like, oh, how dare I take time away from my family to do this thing. And I feel like that book is so good at talking about how important creativity is and how human it is. And also kind of imparting permission, because at the end of the day, it's a part of who you are. And if you pursue it, you are giving your children permission to pursue things they are passionate about as they get older, which you certainly want for them. So I found that book to be so, so good. I actually listened to the audiobook, which I would highly recommend, but I loved it so much I then had to go buy a physical copy. So that's always a good sign I really loved a book when I end up, going from audiobook to hardback.
Oh, that's
amazing. I highly
amazing.
recommend it.
Amazing. I love both answers. It's so cool that you were nervous to enter the thriller space, and here you are. In my eyes, conquering the genre. So that's incredible.
Oh, thank you.
Of course. And I have heard of that Big Magic book referenced a lot as far as being very inspirational for creatives. So that's one I'll definitely have to check out. Thanks for recommending that to us.
You're welcome.
Before we part, I want to give you a chance to, pitch anything that you have going, if you want to just get, or just tell listeners how to find you.
Yeah. Okay. So I have a few things to pitch.
Yeah.
Now that I have them. So my website is jessicapayne.net, and you can find everything there. My last name is spelled Payne. My next book is Somebody Worth Killing. It's coming out in June of 2026, so it's a little ways out. But if you join my newsletter on my website, you'll get to hear when it does come out. It's about a woman who's a mom and a wife and an assassin, and she really needs her babysitter to show up on time so she can go kill this guy.
Wow.
And it's just a lot of fun. It's part thriller. It's also got a ton of dark humor. I loved writing this book probably the most of any book I've ever written. So please keep an eye out for that. And then my Substack is called One Tired Mother, and it is a combination of reading and writing and humor about a lot of mom and parenting stuff, but also some writing craft advice and things like that. And it's a really fun space that I've been developing.
That's amazing. So you've heard it here, guys. So many places to find Jessica. Her stuff is amazing. You can listen to the Moms Writers Club on YouTube as well. So many great things on there, and you don't have to wait for somebody worth killing. She has 4 books out. Read them. They're excellent. I just finished the Lucky One. It's incredible.
Oh,
She
thanks.
knows how to pull off the twist for sure. Thank you so much, Jessica, for coming here. Thank you for sharing your wisdom with us and for joining the community and for constantly sharing what you've learned in your journey to others. It's I can tell you firsthand, it's super helpful.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It's been great chatting with you.
Of course. Bye. Thanks for watching The Right Thing. If you're interested in learning more about what we talked about in today's podcast, you can head over to Substack to check out my newsletter at jasonearhart.substack.com for an even deeper look into the writer's journey. Also, make sure you subscribe to the podcast. That way you can check out all the things we'll be talking about in the coming weeks. We'll be back next time with another interview, offering more insights to take your craft to the next level. Until then, just keep writing.